This is the kind of news that shakes an entire fanbase to its core, the kind of moment where optimism turns to panic, and the future suddenly becomes a cloud of uncertainty. Trevon Diggs, the Dallas Cowboys' elite cornerback, the ball-hawking defensive juggernaut who just recently signed a massive, career-defining deal, is officially out, and it's not just a temporary setback, not a minor camp injury, not a day-to-day hamstring tweak. It's a serious, long-term, game-changing situation that no one saw coming, and the consequences could extend far beyond just the first few weeks of the season. It's surreal to think that only a short time ago, Diggs was riding high as one of the most feared defenders in the league, a player who could change the momentum of a game with one interception, a single swat, a pick six that lit up the stadium and sent the opposing quarterback back to the sideline shaking his head. Now, he's in recovery, working behind the scenes, trying to reclaim the very foundation of his physical dominance: his knee, his quickness, his ability to explode out of a break and stick to a wide receiver like glue. For those who followed the Cowboys closely, this news cuts especially deep because Diggs wasn't just any corner. He was a face of the franchise, a homegrown star who developed into a game wrecker, a Pro Bowl-level athlete who took chances, played with instinct, and gave the Cowboys something they had lacked in the secondary for years: swagger, confidence, and game-changing ability. When he signed his extension, a deal that can rise up to $104 million and potentially push toward $120 million with performance bonuses, retention incentives, and escalators, fans felt like this was a sign the Cowboys were finally locking in their core and investing in a championship window. But that feeling has now been replaced with something entirely different: concern, frustration, confusion, and the gnawing fear that this situation could spiral into something worse than just a missed camp or a slow start. It could turn into a lost season or even a permanent shift in how Diggs is viewed as a player and how Dallas must approach roster building going forward. The truth is, recovering from a torn ACL is hard enough, but Diggs' situation became even more complicated when news surfaced that he required a cartilage graft, a significantly more invasive procedure that isn't just about healing, it's about regeneration, rebuilding a part of the knee that directly affects impact, compression, and lateral agility. That's not just a rehab issue, it's a reprogramming of the body, and for a cornerback, especially one like Diggs who relies on quick cuts, tight coverage, and sudden bursts, it's potentially devastating. The rehab timeline for this type of surgery is months longer than the standard ACL path, and even then, players often report a lingering lack of explosiveness, instability, and psychological hesitation, none of which bode well for someone tasked with locking down the NFL's fastest receivers. And let's be honest, Diggs is a rhythm player, someone who thrives on feel, confidence, momentum, and if that gets disrupted not just physically but mentally, it can take a full season or more just to find the right gear again. And while the Cowboys have remained optimistic publicly, the signs are not encouraging. Diggs missed all organized team activities, skipped minicamp, and by doing so, left hundreds of thousands of dollars in workout and participation bonuses on the table. While the money might seem minor compared to the overall deal, it's symbolic. It's the team betting on his return, and him simply unable to collect because he isn't there. And that absence is more than just a check, it's a void in leadership, in chemistry, in camaraderie, and in practice reps that matter deeply when building a cohesive secondary. There's also the issue of how this affects the team's defensive philosophy under new coordinator Matt Eberflus, who came in with a vision for a more aggressive, disciplined, man-coverage-heavy scheme. That vision, of course, was built assuming Diggs would be a pillar, locking down the boundary, allowing safeties to roam, linebackers to blitz, and slot corners to focus on the inside. Without Diggs, the entire blueprint shifts. Do they play more zone? Do they roll coverage to help weaker corners? Do they bring in more DBs from free agency or promote untested talent from within? None of those answers are ideal, and every one of them weakens what was expected to be one of the league's elite defenses. And while we're on expectations, let's not forget what was on the line this season. The Cowboys are in the middle of a highly scrutinized championship window. With Dak Prescott nearing the end of his prime years, CeeDee Lamb looking for a new contract, Micah Parsons demanding every dollar he's worth soon, and the offensive line slowly aging out of dominance, This is not the time for defensive regression. Yet here we are, facing a season where the very identity of the defense is in question before training camp even begins. And fans? They're justifiably concerned, even angry. On social media, the reactions range from heartbreak to fury. Some are demanding more transparency from the team. Others are pointing fingers at the medical staff, questioning whether the injury was mismanaged, whether the surgery was delayed, or whether Diggs' rehab away from the team created unnecessary complications. The speculation is everywhere, and in the absence of official clarity, rumors begin to fill the vacuum. There's also a deeper, more uncomfortable narrative taking root. Did the Cowboys make a mistake giving such a massive deal to a player who was already carrying injury risk? And if this recovery takes longer or worse, if Diggs never returns to elite form, does that contract become an anchor on their future roster moves? It's a painful question, but one that front offices must ask. And don't think for a second that Jerry Jones and the Cowboys brass aren't already running through contingency plans, contract restructuring scenarios, and future cap impact models to figure out how to pivot if this worst-case scenario continues unfolding. There's also the question of how Diggs himself is handling this. He's a competitor, a proud player, someone who thrives on being in the spotlight, being talked about, and being respected. Sitting out, staying quiet, rehabbing in private, that's not the image he built. And for some players, being physically sidelined creates emotional distance from the team. When you're not out there sweating with your brothers, grinding through the playbook, making eye contact in the huddle, it changes your role. You go from being a warrior to a watcher. And mentally, that can eat at even the strongest minds. How does Diggs cope with that? Does he stay engaged? Does he find other ways to lead? Or does the isolation grow? These are real dynamics that can shape not just performance but locker room morale. And meanwhile, the Cowboys are forced to ask more of less. Players like Darren Bland, Jordan Lewis, and others must rise into roles they weren't quite ready for. Rookies may get thrown into the fire. Veterans may be asked to shift positions or take on hybrid roles. And Eberflus must now prove that his scheme can withstand major injuries, adapt, and still execute under pressure. And perhaps the most pressing question, when exactly will Diggs return? Mid-season? Thanksgiving? December? There's no official timetable, and the longer the silence goes on, the more doubt creeps in. And when he does return, if he does, will he be the same? Will he still have that twitch, that burst, that fire? Or will he be cautious, hesitant, slower to trust that knee? That's the fear, isn't it? That we may have already seen the best of Trevon Diggs, and that what's coming next is a slow, frustrating effort to regain what once came so naturally. And while we all hope for a triumphant comeback, the truth is the NFL is cruel. It waits for no one. If you fall behind, there's always someone younger, cheaper, and healthier ready to take your spot. That's the cold reality Diggs faces now. But if there's one thing Cowboys fans know, it's resilience. And while this chapter feels dark, it doesn't have to end that way. Diggs has the talent, he has the support, he has the will, and if he can fight through this physically, emotionally, professionally, then his return will be more than just a recovery. It'll be a redemption story. Until then, though, we wait. We wonder. We worry. And we hope that when number 7 finally steps back onto that field, we'll remember why the Cowboys believed in him enough to bet $120 million on his future.